Let's go. Y'all know what to do. Show them how to go with me. Let's go.
Hey everyone, it's Jason Deel with JDs Realty and Auction, and welcome to episode number 1, the Knoxville Business Show. And today we're pretty excited about having our first episode. We got with us a special guest, Danny Lowry, all the way from the mighty Mississippi. Welcome, Danny.
Thank you.
Well, tell all of our viewers a little bit about Danny Lowry. And let me say that Danny has been with JD's Realty and Auction since day one. Back January the 31st, 2015, he's been with us from the very beginning. But tell everybody a little bit about Danny, where you came from, where you grew up, and what you've done.
Well, actually, I grew up around Clinton here, went to Clinton High School, graduated Clinton High School somehow, and then immediately moved back to Mississippi, where I had a lot of relatives, northeast Mississippi, about 60 miles from Tupelo, a town called Corinth, and worked for ITT there for 23 years, making telephones, shipping them all over the world.
You made telephones.
The factory there in Corinth actually made telephones, yes.
That's cool.
And we're the first ones to come up with remote telephone systems, and
That's cool. Yeah.
and so
So you ain't as dumb as you act like you are.
well, I don't know about that.
Man can make telephones.
We're,
That's all right.
we're gonna let the viewers
Decide
figure
on
that.
deal. All
Yeah.
right. Okay.
Then while I was working for ITT, I happened to go to a few auctions and got some really good deals. And then before I knew it, I was working with the auction company and doing a lot of trading and eased into doing some woodworking. And I would pick up furniture that needed repair it, and run it through auctions. And then after it just evolved, at one time I was doing 4 auctions per week.
Wow. Yeah.
Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday in the daytime. And then at that time in Mississippi, they didn't have the mandatory auction laws. You could simply go to the courthouse, pay $35, and get your auction license that way.
Yeah.
So that's what I did back in those days to get my auction license, was simply go to the courthouse. Actually, I went during my lunch hour and had time to do lunch.
And got your auction license and everything. That's how it all began. That's an interesting story. So you went from making telephones to 4 auctions a week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, in the mighty Mississippi. That's pretty cool. And by the way, guys, we're broadcasting live right now on Facebook. If you have any questions, Dave will be monitoring the questions. Just pop them on there, and Danny and I'll be happy to answer them for you. And then, of course, if you're watching this post live, then you can still pop any questions, and we'll get back and answer them throughout the week. But today, we're talking about what is an auctioneer. And the interesting thing for me was I wanted to have Danny on here to talk about, what attracted him to the auction industry, where we're at in the auction industry now, and then kind of where we're going, and potentially how could you be involved in the auction industry, either becoming an auctioneer yourself, or if you have items to sell, what path to go down for that. So, okay, so far we've went from making telephones to 4 auctions a week. What really drew you into saying this is kind of neat? Did you just always like buying, selling, trading, or?
Well, yes, I always did that. Also, there's kind of one little, for instance, they would send antiques down from up north. There were I guess you'd call them pickers nowadays, would send antiques down to Corinth for us to sell.
Yeah.
And I bought a mirror that was sent down from up north, a large oak mirror, and gave $10 for it. Mm-hmm. And I took it to an antique store that I was partners in, and hung it on the wall. In less than a week, I sold that mirror for $100. And I
Yeah.
and I said, "Whoa, where in the world can you invest $10
Right.
and in less than a week
Yep.
make $100 and it be legal?
Be legal. not breaking the law or anything.
So that kind of set my pants on fire to keep trading and you know, pick up stuff in the rough and shine it up and
Yeah. Wow.
sometimes give it a story.
It was kind of like going fishing. The first fish you caught, like I was a kid. You know, when Dad took me fishing for the first time, when I caught my first fish, I was hooked. And that mirror just so happened to be your first fish.
Yes, it did.
That's pretty cool. So, you're still in Mississippi all this whole time?
Yes, and then a few years later, Mississippi enacted a auctioneer law, which is written off of and derived from the Tennessee auction laws, which allowed us to start auctioning real estate.
Yeah.
Because up until that point, we could auction anything tangible, but not real estate.
Gotcha.
And you know, it's kind of tiring to go to somebody's estate and say, yes, I can sell everything that you've got, but you're going to have to let a real estate agent take care of the most valuable thing that you've got, which is your property and your home.
Yeah, yeah.
For a while, we kind of darted around it a little bit, and we would auction the property off, and then we would send the buyer over to a table where a licensed real estate agent was sitting, and he would actually do it.
Yeah, yeah, gotcha. So that evolved into now to what this, as we know the law in Tennessee to be, that if you're going to sell a piece of real estate, you have to have 2 licenses.
Right.
You've got to have your auctioneer license, and then you've got to have an affiliate broker license, which is what is commonly referred to as a real estate license. Well, that's interesting. So what brought you to Tennessee, and let's get caught up to that, and then let's talk about kind of how the auction process has evolved. But how did you get to Tennessee?
Well, for a few years, I had been taking my better merchandise, better furniture, and better smalls, bringing them up here and running them through an auction, because it's pretty well common knowledge in Tennessee, the further east you go, the better prices you get. I don't know if it may be kind of tied into Smoky Mountains and so many tourists coming in up there, you know, wanting trinkets and antiques to take back home with them. But anyway, it was pretty well common knowledge the further east you got in Tennessee, the more it was going to bring. And so I would bring antiques up and run them through auctions up here in Knoxville. And then I got to doing a lot of that. And also my parents still lived up here. And so I just kind of evolved on up. ITT basically shut down, started making all their phones over in Indonesia. And so I just kind of evolved back up here because the antique market was better.
It's hotter up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hotter up here. So it was just a natural progression for you to come on up here. That's interesting. You know, since this is our first episode, I'll tell our viewing audience here a little bit about myself. I think most of you probably know, if you're watching this, if you've been following us, I spent 20 years in the Army and decided to retire there about 5.5 years ago. And as a kid, I used to go to auctions with my grandpa, and he would take me and just, you know, I don't know, I can't really remember ever buying anything, but I always thought that was just the neatest thing. A guy up on stage saying, here 5, now 10, what if it 10, now 15, now 20, what if it 25, now 30, now 35. And I thought, you know, that guy, everybody's watching him. And as a kid, you know, you'd like to be center of attention anyway. You know, so I thought, boy, that'd be neat to do that one day.
Yeah, it's a show.
It's just a big show. It is. It's an entertaining show, and that person is a showman. And at the time, about 4 years before I retired, it was time for me to get my master's degree. And when I was getting my MBA, I had to do a project I actually picked a casino to do the project over, our final analysis project. But ultimately, it was about a business that we were going to start. So I had to do a business plan, a marketing plan, And I just picked an auction company that's what we were going to do. And this was, it was maybe it was by accident. I don't know if I guess it was God's plan that it was meant to be. And then when I was at Fort Stewart down in Savannah, I met a friend of mine who ran at that time Savannah Auction Exchange. And I don't even know if I ever told you this, but Natalie and I started going to that auction. And I just called him. I said, hey, if you need any help, I'll help you. I'll do whatever you need. I'll just hold up the items. I just want to be involved somehow.
That's how you get started.
Yeah. Like, don't pay me anything. I don't want any pay. I just want to be there and be involved and see what the back end looks like, the other side, not sitting in the crowd.
Yeah.
And of course he said, yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you very much. Come on down. And we went from that to, we brought him online. We helped him figure out a process to get his auctions online. And then Natalie, she ran the online portion of it. I was holding up the items, and I finally decided it was time to go to auction school because it was time for me to be up on stage instead of holding the items up. And my first ever item that I ever sold down there, which I'm going to ask you this, so be thinking about it if you can remember back that far. My first ever item, Michael, he put me up on stage, and it was a used mattress. And it was nothing but springs is all it was. And I thought it was a joke. Who in the world is going to buy an old 1920s mattress that didn't even have any mattress? It's just the
box springs.
The box spring.
Yeah.
But here them boys drag it out, and they calls me up on stage, and I'm nervous as all can be. Now, mind you, I have briefed thousands of men before in briefings. I've been in front of people, but I'm still nervous. It's my first time. I get on stage, and here they drag this mattress thing out, and I'm thinking, gosh, this ain't going to bring nothing. My first ever item is going to be a no-sale. I'm like, oh, it's going to be horrible. I get up there, and I start this thing at $5, and there was 40 hands went there. I didn't realize how popular these things were. What they were doing was cutting them and making little decorator pieces out of them. Yeah. I think it sold for like $75.
Gosh.
Everybody gave me a round of applause. This is my first item.
Yeah.
And so that was my introduction to selling something live. So what can you remember?
Oh, goodness.
Can you remember, or if you can't remember your first item, what's one of the more interesting things that you've ever sold?
I can't remember my first item.
Well, it was 60 years ago, so that's
That weighs a little bit in. I would like to follow up on something that you just said about your grandfather taking you to auctions. It's for years it was known as the auction barn. You went to the auction barn. Well, when I was growing up in Oliver Springs, there was actually a barn directly across the street from me where they had auctions every Friday night. And of course, I would toddle over there and watch them. Watch the auctioneer call bids, and it was absolutely in a barn.
Wow.
And,
in a barn.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And the barn is still there today.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Huh.
But as far as my first item, I really can't remember what my first item was.
Well, that's okay. We'll come back to that. Think of something interesting. What I'd really like to shift gears on is, I've only got experience of holding an auction in the last 5 years. That's as far as my experience goes. And so my entire time that I've been in this industry, the online portion has been a must-have. Like, you have to be online if you're going to get prices and if you're going to get the reach that a lot of these clients need. Whether it's a piece of art, whether it's a case pocket knife, or whether it's a silver coin, or whatever the case may be. Now, there's certainly arguments that, well, if you have a knife collection, you can still have a live auction and get a lot of good bidders, and I completely agree with that. I think that's an accurate statement. But I don't think you could sell 10,000 case knives and continue to have the same price as if you could if you were doing it online and selling it online, because we have so much, such a higher population of bidders. So I've only known online. How have you seen the evolution of, and I feel like you didn't really kick and scream. whenever I brought you to the online world. You know, it just kind of happened for you. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, when you gave me that phone call that day and says, why am I paying all this rent on this auction house when we're going to start selling online mostly, I thought, well, how can you have an auction without an auction barn?
Right.
You know, it was what hit me first. But no, I had confidence in you, and I went along with you, and it's turned out very well, and it's turned out even better now that we're in the mess that we're in now with the virus and everything.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they've limited the crowds to 10.
10.
Now, if we had a live auction running every week like we used to,
Right.
Talk about in between a rock and a hard place.
Right. And guys, what's today? Today's March the 18th, something like that, 17th. We're in 2020 because this video will be on for the next 25 years. You can go back and watch this. Right now, what's going on is obviously, if you're watching live, you understand this. The coronavirus is the coronavirus of 2020. It's happening, and Danny's absolutely right. With the live auction, we would have 150 people. What would we do if we had an auction, and today's Wednesday, if we had an auction scheduled for 3 days from now on a Saturday, we'd have to cancel it.
Absolutely.
We absolutely would have to cancel it, and we'd have to cancel it until we don't know when. And we have consigners and clients that need to sell, but they can't sell because we can't have an auction. So what a blessing it was for us just to go ahead and already be online. That process is just works. So I agree with what you just said, that I never would have dreamed that we would have been able to be successful without having a barn per se. So that's kind of where we're at now. What I'm curious to hear from you, and I've got my own opinions, and I'll talk about that in a minute, is where do you think we're going? You know, and I named this company JDs Auctions in case Jacob Deel, my little 7-year-old, decided to take over it one day. You know, when Jed is, I don't know, 30 years old, and 25 years from now, I'll be too tired and I'll be pushing you around in a wheelchair. You know, what do you think this business is going to look like? Where do you think we're going with this?
Well, don't they call it nepotism?
Yeah.
I went to a auction class one time, and the teacher got up there and says, I'm going to write a book, and it's going to be called Nepotism in the Auction Business, because every auctioneer that I know, his children have followed him right into the business, more so than any business that I can think of.
Yeah, yeah.
And but you know, which I've seen it too, but they can start at such a small age even.
Right.
I mean, we've even already had Jed hold up things.
Yeah.
You know, it's just entertainment for the people.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Do you think that we'll be able to recognize the process? I mean, the auction industry, for those of you who don't know, is the second oldest profession in the world. And I think we all know what the first oldest profession is, the unspoken, which we don't even need to mention. But as the second oldest profession in the world, it's pretty much stayed the same up until 94.
Yes.
When eBay came along.
Yeah.
Then it was a different way of doing things. Now, there was always I don't know if you know this, or you heard it, but there used to be mail outs where people would mail a catalog, and then you could fill in your bid and mail it back in, and then you could get on the phone and do a last minute phone bid. Yeah. That was revolutionary. And then our world changed when the internet happened. Everything got flipped on its top.
Yeah.
So do you think that you and I will be able to recognize this industry in 20 years? Or is it
probably not? There will be things pop up that we couldn't imagine, just like we couldn't imagine the internet 20 years ago.
Right.
There will be things pop up. Are you familiar with how the auction industry got started in America?
I am, but you might want to tell our viewers. Yeah.
It was started during the Civil War, during the Reconstruction, when the Northern troops came down. They confiscated everything mostly out of the mansions, would throw it out in the yard, and that's where the title of colonel comes from. They would take the highest ranking officer around and let him auction the stuff off to the carpetbaggers and anybody that had money to buy the spoils of war, as they call it.
And the surplus as well, yeah.
And also, that's why when you get your auction license, you're also granted from the governor in the state a honorary colonel. And I know you've all heard of auctioneers referred to as colonels. That comes from the Civil War, when the colonels would actually get up on a stump, or that's where the term auction block comes from too. They would drag around a block of wood, a stump, with them, stand on it where they could identify their bidders and see the crowd and sell items, piles of spoils of war,
yeah,
for the government.
Yeah, which clearly articulates that this service and this particular industry is always going to be needed. Always. I think it's a matter of the fashion that it's sold. Certainly, excess property from Afghanistan and Iraq, I've seen it. I know what it looks like, and I know how much of it there is. But we're not dragging around a wood block selling it anymore. We got online platforms, and we're selling online. I've got a theory that we're only about 15 years away from what I'm going to describe to you next. Virtual reality goggles that you can wear, that when we sell an estate, I am confident that people will be able to put their virtual reality goggles on at home and walk around in that house and see from room to room what they want to bid on, identify it, and then by voice recognition say, I'd like to bid on this piano for $125. And it will automatically register their bid for $125. I'm confident that we're moving in that direction. Now, the technology is getting close. Now, there's not a bunch of people that are working with VR, 2 or 3 hours a day, other than kids playing on virtual reality video games. But gosh, it's going to be fun to watch this industry and how it's going to evolve and how it's going to grow. And that's what we're all about here, is being innovative and trying to be front runners of how this evolves. Well, Danny, we should probably close it up for today.
Okay.
You got any final thoughts?
No, just follow us, keep up with us. We're going to be having some interesting things to sell, some one-of-a-kind things to sell, and just keep up with us and we'll have a good time.
Guys, thanks for watching. We appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe to our channels. Follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, this is the Knoxville Business Show, episode number 1. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you.